Evening folks, it's the General here recording episode 26 of my 59th minute FPL podcast, recording on Thursday evening, the 31st of January. So we've got the first double game week of the season coming up now at the weekend, with Everton and Man City both having two fixtures. So all the talk this week is about Everton and City assets. How many do we go for? Which ones do we go for? Do we ignore them? So instead of the usual format this week, I'm just going to do a questions only podcast. So what I've done is I've pulled about probably 7 or 8 questions from Twitter, which cover the main talking points. And a lot of these questions are being asked a couple of times, so there's a lot of common themes. So I'll tackle those, and basically just doing this podcast to get some of my own thoughts out of my own head as well, because like everyone else, we're all scratching our heads this week and trying to figure out what's the best way to approach it. So just going to share some of my thoughts, and hopefully it'll help a few others to finalise their decisions before the deadline. I'll briefly mention Gameweek 24. I think I got a small green arrow, 46 points. So it was a very disappointing Wednesday night with Salah captain, Hazard and Robertson. But it was enough for a small green arrow, so I won't complain, because there has been a couple of horror stories this week. I've seen quite a lot of people getting less than 30 points, so I'll take the 46 and run with it, and hopefully the double game week can be a lot more profitable points wise. So I'm just going to jump into them. There's no real order to these questions. I'll try and maybe keep the Man City ones together and things like that, but I'm just going to pause and play and just get through these questions as best I can. So jumping right into the first one, may as well get a Hazard out of the way, because I don't want to talk about him after I answer this question. So question from Jason94. He says, do we hold Hazard for Huddersfield, or do we sell him for a City midfielder or even Heung-Min Son? So I am a Hazard owner. It's been a very frustrating couple of weeks. Last 5 games, I think it's 1 assist in the last 5 games. It's basically 5 blanks. That's the way I'm looking at it anyway. Very frustrating. Chelsea getting beat 4-0 by Bournemouth. Nobody's seen that one coming. Now I'm asking myself the question, do I keep Hazard for Huddersfield, or do I get rid of him? So I put a tweet out just before I started recording about, I would love to know what the situation is with Paul Pogba, because if I knew Pogba was fit, I would consider pulling the trigger tonight on Hazard to Sterling. So that was my thinking this week, was to do Hazard to Sterling, to give me Sané, Sterling and Richarlison for the double game week. Now, I thought I was going to have Lucas Digne as well, but he's going to miss the first game of the double game week because of the red card. You really couldn't make it up with Digne. I got him in for Trent on Tuesday. You just can't make it up, the luck I'm having this season. But hopefully it'll turn and I can get a respectable rank by game week 38. But back to Hazard. The issue I have personally with Hazard is, if I want to get Sterling for Hazard in a straight swap for free, I've only got 0.0 to play with. So it looks like Hazard's probably going to fall in price tonight. It's not guaranteed, but it's looking that way, looking at the price website. So that's the pickle I'm in. If I was to do Hazard to Sterling tonight, and then Solskjaer comes out tomorrow and says Pogba's injured, that puts me down to 10 players basically. I would have Lucas Digne, but it's one game against Man City, so you're not really expecting much there. And I've got Fabianski as well. So that's another worry, because he's a slight injury out as well. I don't think I'd worry too much about that one though, because Fabianski is playing Liverpool, so I wouldn't really expect anything more than 2 points from him anyway. So I'd probably just roll without a goalkeeper if Fabianski was to be ruled out. But that's the pickle I'm in. It's, do I keep Hazard after 5 blanks to see if he can come good against Huddersfield, or do I go all in on City and get Sterling to go alongside Sané? Now another problem with that is, we've got to think ahead with our transfers this week. We've got to look at game week 27, where City, Everton, Chelsea and Brighton don't play. So if I get Sterling in this week, I'm creating problems for myself, because that would give me 2 Everton and 2 City, and I've already got Balbuena injured. Kamara has gone left for Turkey today, so I'm already in a bit of trouble for Game Week 27. So that, I really don't know what to do. That's the short answer. Moving on to a question linked now to that one. Came in from FPL Football Advice. Can we trust triple captain on a City asset this week? So a lot of people are asking themselves this question. I'm one of those people. I just think a triple captaincy opportunity for with a team like Man City, it shouldn't be ignored. It's definitely something we have to think about, no matter what kind of form they're in. I watched Man City Newcastle Tuesday night, and City were way off the pace. It was a very odd match to watch. City just weren't at the races whatsoever. Now, it's hard to know what will come of that. I would expect them to bounce back, so maybe that result is a good thing for the upcoming double game week. But then obviously it could go the other way, and they may struggle again. Arsenal and Everton, it's not exactly easy fixtures on paper, but I would look at those 2 fixtures as good fixtures for the City attackers, because I don't really rate Arsenal or Everton defensively. Obviously the big question with City is rotation. We have no idea which players will play both games. Now, we all thought Ederson was the safest, but he's an injury out now as well, so it's a risky decision to bring him in unless it comes out tomorrow in the press conference that he's fit and well. So all that considered, do we play triple captain in 25 or do we hold it? Again, I'm undecided. I kind of before I watched the City Newcastle game midweek, I was pretty set on going for triple captaincy. More on him, and if I bring in Sterling, obviously I've got 2 options then to go for the triple captaincy. And as the weekend gets closer, I'm starting to think more about my chip strategy as well. And this links in another question which came in from Robert Hellier. He just simply asked, what will be my chip strategy this season? And I still feel we don't have enough information. I don't think anybody has a set in stone strategy yet for their chips and their second wildcard. There's just too much up in the air at the moment. But something I have been thinking about this week, and it was Peter Blake on Twitter. I think his handle is MathSafeFPL. A very good FPL mind. And he kind of got me thinking a little bit differently to what I had been. So I mentioned in a previous podcast that my thinking this season was free hit in the first big double game week, and then keep the wild card for around game week 33, 34, and then use the bench boost close to that. And one of those is the big double game week. But I think it's good. It's good to keep an open mind. What I'm going to do, because I simply don't know yet. And I think it's good to see fresh ideas, and that's one of the best things about the FPL community on Twitter. It opens up your mind to possibly going a different route and challenging your own thoughts, and that's what that tweet from Peter did this week for me, and Trev, FPL Trev as well, talking about the triple captaincy as well. If we don't use triple captaincy this week on a City asset, when do we use it then? Because as far as I know, there is a chance, Chelsea are due, another double game week, but I think it could fall into the double game weeks that we already are expecting. So that would be a problem, because we couldn't really use triple captaincy then on Chelsea, because we're going to probably use free hit and the bench boost in the 2 doubles. And if the extra Chelsea game falls into one of those 2 big double game weeks, you don't know where the question then is, where do we play the double play the triple captain? So that has me going back towards City again. We know City have a double game week. We don't know when Chelsea's will be, or what kind of form they're going to be in, or anything. So why not just play it this week when we know what's happening? Going back to that idea as well, if I don't play triple captaincy on City. Something else I've been thinking about, which goes back to Peter's thoughts as well, was possibly playing an early wildcard, or earlier than planned. I've always used my bench boost and wildcard together. You play your wildcard one week and then you bench boost in the double game week the week after. But I think I think it is worth considering playing it early as well. If you don't use your triple captaincy this week. Because then that would allow you to, for the 2 double game weeks later in the season, you would look to possibly play your triple captaincy in one of those instead of City this week. But that would mean possibly playing the bench boost in a single game week. Now, that's something I've never done, but it's something I'm considering this season. And in my position, I don't really have much to lose this season, so it's probably a good opportunity for me to try something different. So that I've kind of begun thinking about possibly going a different route than I usually do. The idea of loading up on double game week players and then playing a bench boost, the idea of getting 15 players playing twice is great, but it rarely works out that way. And there's often, especially when it's late in the season, there's often a lot of rotation. So you effectively, the bench boost, I've never had too much success with bench boost in the past, even if all my subs are playing twice. I know last season it didn't go great for me. And I think if you set up properly with a view to bench boosting in a single game week, it can work just as well as in a double game week. So you would target 4 bench players that have a good fixture. So the idea of that would be, just say for example, if you wildcarded game week 27, you would bench boost then in 28. So you would set up your side in 27 with players who you will bench in game week 28, but who have a good fixture. So more than you're looking at cheap players who have good fixtures, for the bench boost. So that's just something I'm thinking about, and I think it's good to get it out there a bit more as well, and get people to think outside the box as well, because Twitter can be an echo chamber, and a lot of people tend to go the same direction. But I think quite simply this season there's too much up in the air yet to have a set in stone strategy, and that just has me, and I'm sure it has a lot of people, just really scratching their head and undecided on what to do. And at this point in time, I'm still undecided on whether to triple captain a City player. Part of me just is saying, just go for it. It's more fun. Just go for it, get out of the way, and see what happens. Because especially if I brought in a player like Sterling, his ownership's very low, and even if he didn't start both games, even if he played one game and played maybe 30 minutes of another one, you're talking 120 minutes. Sterling could do big damage in 120 minutes, as could Sané. Some people are looking at Aguero as well. I do prefer the midfielders though. I just think there's more potential there for explosive returns. So part of me is looking at that low ownership in the likes of Sterling and Sané and what it could do for my rank if it paid off. Now that is, that's the big question, and I'm not going to ramble on too much more because I'm not really giving any helpful information here. I'm not saying what's the right or wrong thing to do, because I just think simply there is no right or wrong way to do it. You've just got to go with how you feel, and I think a lot of what's happening this weekend, it depends on how your own team is set up. You've got to look ahead to game week 27. If you're well set up for that already, you can be bolder with going all in on City or Everton assets. If you're like me and you're kind of struggling already for game week 27, you probably have to be a bit more careful. Anyway, I'm just rambling, so I'm just going to pause it for a second and look through one or two more of these questions and then get going again. I'm going to move away from City for a question or two, because even just recording this pod, it's frying my brain even more. So I had a question from Ryan Mullen, who's asking about suitable replacements for Lucas Digne. So if I don't go the Sterling route tonight, what I would probably end up doing is just replacing Lucas Digne. So this is a question I'm asking myself as well this week. There's a lot of directions you can go with replacements. The Liverpool defence is always probably the first place to look at if you don't already own Robertson and you've got some cash. If it comes out tomorrow that Trent Alexander-Arnold looks like he could be back, he's another option. So I may end up just reversing that transfer. Digne to Alexander-Arnold. Kolasinac is a player I really like. He's got Man City this weekend, so it's not the ideal time to bring him in. But the way I was looking at it was, if I did Digne to Kolasinac, I would probably just bench Kolasinac this week to give me a sub and start Wan-Bissaka. But then it's the next 3 fixtures I like for Kolasinac. It's Huddersfield, Southampton and Bournemouth. Kolasinac has been passing the eye test big time for me recently. He got the assist for Aubameyang's penalty in midweek as well. So again, it just highlights his attacking potential. Another player I was looking at today was Holebas. He got an assist again midweek. I think he's got 7 assists now this season. But then I realised that he's on 9 yellow cards. So if he gets one more, I think it's before game week 32, he gets a 2-game ban. So, quite simply, Holebas is going to have a 2-game ban very soon, the way he plays the game. So that rules him out. There's no point bringing in a player, that's facing a 2-game ban soon. Another option is Pereira, Leicester. Again, fixtures are not great. He's got United and Spurs next, but then he doesn't have a blank this season, so he's kind of a set and forget option then. But it's more so from game week 27 onwards for Pereira. Every time I watch him, he looks good. Even when he plays right back, he gets forward. So he's an option as well, but he's probably more so an option if you can bench him for the next 2 weeks. So I do like Pereira. Obviously, with the double game week, then you could look at Everton. You could look at an Everton replacement for Digne. I just don't really like any of them with their fixtures. City, you could look at City, but then again, I can see City conceding in both games, so that's why I'm not really interested in bringing in a City goalkeeper or defender. Now, if I was pushed and I had to choose a City defender, Laporte is probably the one I would go for. I think he's been their best defender this season, and he's played almost every game. I think he might have only missed one. So he's the most nailed on. If anybody is nailed on in Pep's team, so that's the way I'd go if I was going City. But I'm just going to avoid them because I really don't really see them keeping clean sheets. I think they've only got 3 in the last 14 or something like that. I think that was the figure Jay Egersdorf mentioned in his video yesterday. The other option then for replacing Lucas Digne is a downgrade just to free up cash. So Bednarek at Southampton is a great enabler. And he plays in blank 27 as well, which is a bonus. Now, it's not a great fixture. I'm just double checking. Yeah, he plays Arsenal in 27, so it's not ideal. But again, he's got a couple of decent fixtures coming up: Burnley, Cardiff, Fulham. So there could be clean sheets there. He's gone up to 4 million now, but again, he's great value and he's a great enabler. So maybe if you're looking to replace Digne to free up cash, maybe to do an attacking move to get a City attacker, Bednarek could be your friend there. Going back now to Man City, question from Larry McCormick. If I owned all 3, who would I captain? Aguero, Sané or Sterling? So I'm sure there will be people loading up on all 3 of those players and really attacking the double game week to try and maximise points. At most I'll have 2. I've already got Sané. I've already said I might get Sterling. But for those who've got all 3, it's really tough then to choose a captain. Even if you only own 2, it's very hard to choose a captain from the City players. It really is a lottery with which of them are going to get the most minutes. The only thing about Aguero that I don't like is Jesus. Jesus has been playing very well recently, so you would like to think he would get a start in one of the 2 games. Now, Pep could obviously play both of them together. And that's another worry with City. After the defeat to Newcastle, Pep could really shake things up and drop 1 or 2 of the players and maybe go with Aguero and Jesus. So that's obviously scary for the likes of Sané and Sterling, for people who own those. But I wouldn't be surprised to see watching Pep on the bench midweek. He was very, very frustrated. So maybe he'll just completely shake things up and make loads of changes. So again, big worry. So if I was pushed to make a decision, who would I captain, Aguero, Sané or Sterling? I think I would opt for a midfielder because of Jesus, and also just the simple fact that they get a point for a clean sheet and they get the extra point for the goal as well. So something I haven't gave too much thought to. Obviously, if I bring Sterling in tonight, I'm going to have to make a decision on this myself. At the moment, I think it would be Sané. I just feel he's possibly more likely to start both games than Sterling. That's just my own feeling now. That may not happen, so don't take that as gospel. But to me, City, on the left hand side, there's Sané or nobody really. But on the right hand side for City, Mahrez could come in there. Obviously, talking about shake-ups from Pep, he could drop Sané, he could play Sterling left, he could play Mahrez right. We just don't know. But I do just feel there's a slightly better chance of Sané starting both games. So that's probably where I'll go with captaincy or triple captaincy if I decide to go that route. So that's the answer to that one. While I'm on the question of captaincy, I'll just talk about Game Week 25 captaincy in general as well, because I did have a question about that. I can't remember who asked it, but it was basically a question: do we triple or do we captain the City assets, or should we be considering the likes of Salah against West Ham, Son against Newcastle, or even Hazard? Dare I say his name again? Who plays Huddersfield at home? So Salah's probably the one I'd be most interested in if I didn't go for a City player this week, just because he's playing West Ham, and West Ham have been absolutely shocking recently. They've been hit really hard with injuries. Wolves absolutely battered them midweek, scored 3, so Liverpool could easily rack up 4 or 5 in that game, I feel. So Salah has to be in contention for captaincy, even with the double game week. Some people will probably be tempted to go Richarlison as well, just because he has 2 games, but I find Richarlison a very hard player to trust. So I'm not going to go there myself for captaincy. Richarlison, I'm just happy enough to own him and just hoping for the best that hopefully he can be the double game week hero. But for me, the player with 2 fixtures, or the player who potentially will have 2 fixtures, always wins out for me, and that's why I'll be going for a City captain this week. Even if it's only, even if they only play 120, 130 minutes, I much prefer that to a 90-minute player like Salah, Son or Hazard. So that's the way I'll be going, but we've seen it many times before, single game week players outscoring double game week players, so I would not be surprised to see players like Salah, Son, probably Hazard. We know what he's like when people sell him, so don't be surprised to see those guys outscore the likes of Aguero, Sané, Sterling. Just on the topic of Everton there as well, a player who very little people are talking about is Gylfi Sigurdsson. We're all blinded because we have Richarlison, or a lot of people have Richarlison. But Sigurdsson has the potential to be the double game week hero. He'll play both games, I would imagine. Set pieces, Lucas Digne's missing the first game, so Sigurdsson should be on the free kicks. He'll be on penalties, so Everton could surprise us and do very well over the 2 games. And if Everton do well, I would fancy Sigurdsson to do well. So one to consider, possibly a little bit under the radar. Talking about players under the radar, I had a question from John Chappell asking what are my thoughts on Sadio Mane. So Mane's another player who I don't see many people talking about on social media, mostly because we've got Salah. Most people have Robertson. A lot of people have Firmino, possibly Van Dijk, Alisson. So, a lot of people are already tripled up on Liverpool. But for those who are not tripled up on Liverpool, and a lot of people are probably looking to sell Hazard, and automatically it's easy to just go straight to a Man City player. But I definitely think we need to consider the likes of Mane and Heung-min Son as well. If you look at their fixtures, Spurs have Newcastle, Leicester, Burnley. Very good fixtures for Son. Came back with a goal right away. So he's a player I would love to fit in as soon as I can. And then you've got Mane. I think it's back-to-back goals now. I think it might be 3 goals in the last 5 games. And definitely a player who's under the radar, and someone I'm interested in. Liverpool have got West Ham, Bournemouth next. Two very good fixtures again on paper for attackers. Bournemouth have tightened up, 2 clean sheets since Boric came in there, but I wouldn't fancy them to keep a clean sheet against Liverpool. So part of my reasoning for selling Trent last week was obviously he was injured, but I also like the fact that it freed up a Liverpool spot for me, and it gives me the option of getting an attacker in if I want to. And Mane, I think I would go for Mane over Firmino at the moment, from what I've seen recently. If it's going to be their year, and if it does turn out to be their year, as soon as they win the title, I will be deactivating all social media for at least 2 months, because I just can't listen to Liverpool fans gloating. We know what they're like. They won't just gloat for the summer, they'll gloat for about 15 years. So I'm really not looking forward to that. Hopefully Spurs somehow can just fight back and win the league, so I don't have to listen to Man City or Liverpool fans. But back to my point, if Liverpool are going to win the league, they're going to need they're going to need Mane to step up between now and the end of the season, and he's already shown signs of that. And he's quietly going about his business the last 2 game weeks. So he's definitely a player I'm interested in. And if I decide not to go Sterling, and I think maybe I'll think more about game week 27. Definitely Son and Sadio Mane are probably the 2 players I'm most likely to look at. If Pogba gets ruled out, I think I would just go straight to Heung-min Son. I think that's a no-brainer for anyone. You don't need to think twice about that one. But maybe if you've got a little bit of extra cash, then you can think about Sadio Mane if you've got a free Liverpool spot. I hope this podcast comes out okay. It just without a structure, it just feels like I'm rambling. But hopefully there's plenty of useful information in here to get you thinking. Next question was from FPL Logic. A question about a player who is on my radar as well, and that's Aubameyang. So FPL Logic's question was: is it worth doing Aubameyang out for Aguero for the double game week and then getting Aubameyang back in, so reversing the transfer? So a lot of people are thinking about this week who already own Aubameyang, and this is something I've never liked. It's a 1 week transfer. Now it is slightly different when it's a double game week, so it's probably easier to do it in a week like this. But the way I'd be looking at that is Aubameyang could easily, I would fancy Aubameyang to do well against City, the way City have been defending. So you're going to want Aubameyang back in game week 26. So in that situation, I would just keep Aubameyang and focus on the Man City midfielders instead. So I'm not a fan of the hokey cokey. That doesn't mean it won't work out. People, there will be people this week who get rid of Aubameyang, who bring in Aguero, captain Aguero, and if Aguero starts, at least one of the games, and if he starts 2 games, he could do serious damage. So don't let me put you off that move. It's just a move I don't really like doing, the hokey cokey, because by not doing the hokey cokey, you can focus your game week 6 transfers elsewhere in your team then, rather than having to get Aubameyang back in. So I mentioned he's a player who's on my radar. I owned Aubameyang earlier in the season, and I'm looking to get him back in game week 26. It's those Arsenal fixtures: Huddersfield, Southampton, Bournemouth. Game week 26, 27, 28. I would like to own Aubameyang, and especially game week 27, because that's the week that United play Liverpool. So that kind of rules Salah out as a captaincy option for me, because he doesn't do well against the top 6 historically this season. It doesn't mean he won't do well against United, but for me, I would rather have Aubameyang as captain that week. So back to my possible plans. If I keep Hazard for Huddersfield, what I would do then is game week 26, I would probably sell Hazard for a 4.5 million midfielder, or even someone like Jason Punchin, who plays in the blank game week. And then I would change the bad boy Kamara to Aubameyang. And it would possibly be a -4 if I make a transfer this week, but I wouldn't mind getting Aubameyang for a -4 because I would fancy him over those 3 fixtures to pay me back. The same goes for if I get rid of Hazard this week and get Sterling. What I would probably do then 26 is just get rid of Sterling. The same thing, get rid of Sterling for a cheap, budget midfielder, and get Aubameyang in for Kamara. So it would be a move back to 3-4-3, giving me Aubameyang, Jimenez and Rashford up front. So I like the sound of that front 3, and that could be, Aubameyang could see me move back to a 3-4-3, but obviously a lot can change between now and then. But that is my thinking. So a lot hinges on Pogba. Do I take the chance tonight that Pogba is going to be fit and just be done with Hazard and get Sterling in, and go hard or go home basically for the double game week? And in the back of my mind, I mentioned a possible early wildcard. If everything goes wrong and my team ends up in a mess, in 2 or 3 weeks' time, the wildcard is always there. And again, it's easier for me, ranked at about, I think I'm about 225k at the moment. It's a lot easier for me to take a few risks because I really don't have anything to lose this season. I would imagine, if I was, a lot higher in the ranks, or for people who are doing well this season, if you're in the top 100k, top 50, top 10k, you're probably going to play a more cautious approach. But it is definitely good to think outside the box because, gains can be made by going against the grain. And that's kind of my thinking. Last two questions. They're not really related to the double game week, but I thought I'd answer these anyway. The first one was from FPL Triple Crap. A great name, FPL Triple Crap, because more often than not our triple captaincy does end up being crap. Hopefully not this season. His question was, how do I reset the season? And all I'll say is, FPL Triple Crap, if you do figure out how to reset it, let me know, because it's something I would like to do myself. But the best thing about FPL is there's always next season, and anybody can have a bad season. And I think that the Elite 64 League that I run has really highlighted that fact for me this season, because I put a tweet out a few weeks ago that the top 5 managers in that league last season are all in the relegation zone at the minute. So they're all 200,000k or worse. So we were all top 1k finishes last season, and all 5 of us are struggling this season. So that just shows you, anyone can have a rough season, and FPL can be very punishing. The last question came in from the Art of the Dive FPL podcast, and that's a podcast I recommend you check out as well. I listened to it for the first time 2 weeks ago. A very good podcast, lots of good information. I think they've got a podcast out this week as well, so be sure to check that one out, the Art of the Dive FPL podcast. A good question here from the guys there was, why do I call myself the General? Is it because I'm good at FPL, or do I just like the name? How the name came about was when I joined the FPL community on Twitter. Well, I didn't really know I was joining a community. I used to use Twitter as a personal account, basically just to follow Ben Dinnery and Fantasy Football Scout. And then I realised there was a lot more, FPL accounts on Twitter. And when I set up Twitter, it was May 2016. I set up the account, and I noticed basically everyone had an FPL handle. There was FPL Chief and FPL Fly, and basically everyone had an FPL name. So I started out as FPL Mark, but I quickly realised that there's a pretty famous FPL Mark, so I don't think there was room for two of us. So I decided to change the name, and basically I think I put up a Twitter poll. I will try and find the poll that I put up. So basically I came up with a few ideas myself, and I think I came up with 4 ideas, and one of them was FPL General, and that won the vote, and that's simply how it started. So I started out as FPL General, and it's just stuck then. I've often considered changing my Twitter account just to my name, Mark McGettigan, but I think once you build up my alter ego, it would be probably silly to change it now. As I've said before, I'm known more as the General now than I am as Mark. Even my own mother mentioned the General in my wedding speech, in her wedding speech. So I don't think there's any going back now. I think the General's here to stay. So thanks for the questions, everyone. As I think I've mentioned what my possible plans are. So it's basically tonight, bite the bullet, Sterling in for Hazard, or if not, wait and see what's the story with Pogba. If Pogba's injured, probably get Son. If Pogba's okay, I may just do Lucas Digne to someone like Bednarak, Kolasinac. I really don't know who I'll go for there. And then, Aubameyang is someone I'd like to get in for Gameweek 26. So, as I said, this podcast could be absolutely rubbish. It was a lot of rambling, but hopefully you took something from it. Let me know what you think about my thoughts, plans, ideas as well. I'm always open to fresh ideas, and let me know what you think of anything I mentioned in the podcast. Is there anything I didn't mention that maybe I should have? Let me know. Tomorrow is the 1st of February, so the start of a new month is always the best time to sign up to Patreon. because basically you get a free trial. You don't get charged until the 1st of every month. So my current patrons are going to get charged tomorrow for January, and then anyone who signs up from tomorrow onwards doesn't get charged until the 1st of March. So if you want to check out the Patreon, don't sign up tonight, basically. Wait until tomorrow, and you get a free trial. And the link to my Patreon page is pinned on my Twitter account. So good luck in the double game week, whichever way you decide to approach it. I'm just going to wish myself luck as well, because I could do with some after the last couple of weeks. So hopefully whatever way I approach it, whether I go Sterling or not, whether I go triple captain or not, hopefully it works out for the better. So good luck for the weekend. I should mention as well, I'm going to do the Match of the Day challenge on Saturday, and I would encourage everyone to have a go at it as well, especially if you've never tried it before. So basically on Saturday I'm going to switch off my phone for the whole day, get out of the house, just go out, have a nice day, probably head to the pub, because I've been doing dry January. I've got about 4 hours left and it's dry January completed, so I'll probably go to the pub on Saturday, avoid all the results, and then come home, watch Match of the Day at 10:30 without knowing anything, without knowing team lineups, results, and just watch it unfold live. So I'll probably do a couple of tweets about that tomorrow and Saturday anyway. So I encourage you to give that a go. It's always good to take a step away from technology and enjoy your weekend without the FPL stress. Right, that's enough rambling, folks. I'll be back on Tuesday with episode 27.